High tension in the Middle East as an Iranian attack on Israel looks imminent. 2 Israelis were killed in a knifing attack on the streets of a major city. And the U.S. is moving more firepower to the Mediterranean. Israel's defense forces are on high alert as an Iranian attack is perceived to be imminent. We'll start with Joe Brown's report.
I emphasize that there is no change in instructions from Home Front Command. We will provide you with all the necessary warnings of all threats. And until we say otherwise, there is no change in the preparations for the home front. We will update you, only when it's necessary. In this regard, we are ready with a strong defense, in air, sea, and land.
The waiting game continues. Israelis are bracing for an imminent attack from Iran. No one knows when it will happen, or what exactly will happen, only that it will happen. But despite lingering fears of what could be heading their way, Israelis have a clear message: life must go on.
Just don't take it like as black and white. If this rocket's going to go to Tel Aviv and that's it, building is going to fall.
Is just waiting to get bombed somehow, and nobody knows where from and when.
So there are multi-fronts, but there are 2 main fronts, I would say. One is the Iranian front, and the other one is Hezbollah from Lebanon. Now, if we speak about the Iranians, they are 100%, they know that they need to react to what happened, and they rejected all the American requests to contain their response. I mean, they rejected that. All the messengers that came from Oman and Switzerland by the Americans were completely rejected. So we know that Iran is going to respond. But Iran, bear in mind, doesn't want to have a full-scale war.
We're joined now by Sarit Zahavi, a resident of northern Israel, also a former IDF officer. Hello and good evening to you.
Good evening here from the Alma Center in northern Israel.
How do you describe this situation from your standpoint up there in the north?
Look, I think that even though we are saying that Iran is not interested in a full-scale war, it is totally willing to take the risks. And this was proved in the April attack, and this was proved by Hezbollah policy basically since October 8. We are under constant attacks here, more than 2,500 attacks since October 8, missiles and anti-tanks missiles and rockets and drones. This is the reality here every day, and eventually it is clear that Israel will have to do something. If not now, then later, doesn't matter. But Iran and Hezbollah are aware of the unbearable situation they put Israel in.
Israeli heads of Mossad, Shin Bet, and IDF are all reportedly blaming Prime Minister Netanyahu for blocking a hostage deal. Add to that some words President Biden told Netanyahu in a phone call, which are not ready for prime time, these words. I-24 News' Bianca Zanini reports.
U.S. President Joe Biden is reportedly fed up with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. According to local media, the American president told the Israeli leader to, quote, stop bullshitting him during their phone conversation late last week. Biden has previously hinted that Netanyahu was stalling efforts to reach a ceasefire for hostages deal with Hamas, and he reportedly added that Israel should not take the president for granted.
I'm very concerned about it.
All right, now let's go to the north. I-24 News' Robert Swift is reporting live from northern Israel tonight. Rob, what's the latest?
The border here remains pretty tense. At the minute, there's been limited action on the northern border. Nothing which is outside the usual scale of violence that we see here. Rocket fall earlier in Kiryat Shmona, and there has been Israeli attacks inside southern Lebanon. But for the most part, the tensions here remain being felt by the communities. We've been spending a lot of today moving around some of the evacuated communities, talking to the people who, despite it being evacuated, are still nonetheless here. Now, there was a couple of young guys I spoke to who said that they were serving in reserve units here and that most of the population does remain evacuated. They said the number of people living in towns like Shlomi, it goes up and down depending on the tensions of each given day.
Syria in this brewing Middle East picture. We have Omar Al-Muqdad with us. Good evening to you. a Syrian-born journalist and filmmaker. Hi, Omar.
Hi, how you doing?
All right. So there's a lot going on inside Syria, as you probably know. What's your assessment as to Assad's point of view regarding Israel and this coming conflict?
Well, it seems that Bashar Assad, Syria is the only side in this chaotic situation, which hits the entire region, is the only side that's trying to avoid confrontation with Israel. The Syrian regime is a long time ago decided that he is not in his interest to go to war with Israel at this point, because all he cares about is his situation in Syria, and his main enemy is actually inside Syria, the Syrian people.
Back to Middle East now here on I-24 News. In the central Israeli city of Holon today, a terror attack in which 2 Israelis were killed and 2 wounded. I-24 News' Joe Brown reports.
Horror in Holon. An Israeli woman in her late 60s and a man in his 70s were killed in a stabbing spree on Sunday morning in the central Israeli city just south of Tel Aviv.
The police quickly arrived to the scene as the terrorist was attacking the civilians who were here behind me. As you can see, enjoying the morning in the park, the terrorist managed to get to the main road where the police officers engaged him with gunfire, and his death was declared at the scene.
According to Magen David Adom, there were 3 separate attacks around 500 meters apart from each other. An elderly couple was stabbed at the entrance to a park. The husband taken to hospital in serious condition, whilst the wife was pronounced dead at the scene. 1 man was killed at a nearby bus stop, and another person was stabbed at the entrance to a bus terminal. The attacker was a 34-year-old resident of the West Bank who had no prior offences and did not have a permit to enter Israel.
After the assassination of Hamas chief Ismail Haniyeh, the next in line may be someone who survived just that many years ago. I-24 News' Ariel Osuran reports.
The surprise and mysterious assassination of its leader Ismail Haniyeh has thrown Hamas into an unexpected succession campaign. Hamas has begun talks in Qatar to select its new leader, with much speculation as to who might fill Haniyeh's shoes.
I assure the public that Hamas will maintain its line and remain solid. Hamas is an institutionalized movement with legislative institutions, and it is the decision maker in dealing with any event that takes place within the movement.
But the identity of the successor could have major implications over the future of the terror group. The 3 leading names to replace Haniyeh are his predecessor, Khaled Mashal, the deputy head of Hamas in Gaza, Khalil El-Haya, and senior official Musa Abu Marzouk.
Thank you, Yaki, as well. Let's move on to this. Turkey blocked access to Instagram after the social network blocked posts following the assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh. So we are joined by Mike Sexton, an expert on cybersecurity. Good evening to you.
Happy to be here.
First of all, we understand Instagram is too popular, so people in Turkey found some ways to connect anyway. It is hard to block it entirely, right? Or maybe impossible.
Yes, obviously. Instagram, I believe I saw today, has about 50 million users in Turkey. So it is a very popular app, not just in Turkey, I mean, really around the world, even in countries like Iran that heavily censor the internet. So this is a really difficult kind of decision for Turkey to make this political choice because Instagram is censoring the glorification of terrorism.
At least 37 civilians were killed and over 200 were injured in an explosion at a popular beach restaurant in the Somali capital of Mogadishu that happened late on Friday. Here's more in the next report.
They didn't have time to run. The popular Lido Beach in Mogadishu, Somalia, turned into a nightmare when a suicide attack carried out by Al-Shabaab militants killed at least 32 people and injured 63 others.